Welcome to the Tea with Tamara podcast. I'm Tamara Arnold, and it wasn't that long ago that I was a broke single mom drinking way too much, completely detached from everything. Now I've written multiple books, downloaded I Could Read Chakras, and I'm a channel for the universe. I'm a real person with real stories, and I can't wait to share them with you. So grab a warm bevy and let's have some enlightened conversation to live our best life. Oh, friends, I am so excited to have Inna with us today because not only is she spectacular, she is talking about something that I find personally so important. Now, nobody listening probably knows that I have had major tests done to find out about my own gut health and never quite got to the conclusions that I was looking for until I went to a functional medicine doctor. And so being able to have Inna, who has not only done the functional medicine, but also has her pharmaceutical behind her. She has something that she hasn't talked about, but I know we're going to talk about in this podcast as well behind her. So she really is like the trifecta of knowing what is going on in your body. And Inna, I am so happy that you decided to come on the podcast to share all these details with us. Thank you.
So honored to be here with you, my darling.
So as we kind of get started, I'd just like to ask the open question of just tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. And thank you for having me here. What I do in my practice is take care of people's tummies and their hormones. I get clients with autoimmune conditions such as Crohn's and colitis, which is where I specialize. I also do natural hormone balancing, and I take them from the point where they lost, confused, whether they're newly diagnosed, and just went through a series of tests with a traditional doctor and were given medications and it's overwhelming. Or I take clients that have been doctor hopping, we call it, from doctor to doctor because they can't get the result that they're really seeking. And the result that they're seeking is to finally whether get off the medication that's causing side effect or possibly decrease the medication or just feel better. Some of the clients, many of the clients don't feel better even on medications. They're confused. They don't know what to eat. They start being afraid of eating. They're seeing food as their enemy. And they start getting to the point where they almost get depressed. Depressed because they can't get out of the house. Crohn's and colitis clients may stay in the bathroom most of the day. And they're looking for someone, hello me, that can truly take them by the hand at that point, because a lot of these cases are lost. They've tried this, they've tried that. They even went into the holistic round of maybe acupuncture, acupressure, other modalities, but they're still not feeling better. So functional medicine is kind of both. We do incorporate some of the holistic practices, but we really go on.
Okay, I'm going to slow you down because this is a lot to take in. We're going to have to dissect this down a little bit because I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so many things here that I want to talk about and ask about.
Right.
Right. So yes. I'm gonna rewind a little bit.
Sure.
We're going to go back, Inna, right back to the very beginning of where all this began, right? Because this is going to be a random side shoot here, but like clearly you have an accent.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Which I love.
Oh, thank you.
So where were you born, Inna?
I was born in Ukraine. At that point, it was under Russia, so it was the USSR. And then everyone spoke Russian. Where I come from, currently in that country, they all speak Ukrainian. So it's kind of sort of a different place than I left now.
Yeah, that's already fascinating that, you had a country that you were born into that spoke a specific language and now is completely speaking a separate language. It's like not even the same country. Like, do you feel connected to?
I haven't been there since. I have some far relatives that are still there that we haven't talked to. I don't really connect that much with the country. No, I haven't. I was 15 when I got here, and it was a beautiful thing to feel that freedom that I did not feel there. And I was just thrilled to be here in the United States.
So I don't know a lot of history, and I definitely don't know much outside of my Canadian history. So when you say that you left here to come over when you were 15 and that you felt free when you got here, my first question is, what about being in the Ukraine didn't feel free while you were living there?
First, the country at that point had that political way where no one felt free. Plus, being Jewish didn't add up to be totally free among others. There was heavy anti-Semitism in that country way before and past the war time. So I felt kind of singled out. I was the only Jewish girl in class. And you feel uncomfortable, especially as you're growing up. I did have I still communicate with people that I've been friends with there. One of them actually lives in Canada by you. She moved out as well with her husband and family. It's a general thing when we say anti-Semitism. I did meet tons of people that loved me to pieces and were my best. She was my great friend, for example.
Okay, hold on 1 second, because we're going to have to cut the clip because you froze.
Oh, okay.
She moved out with her husband and family was the last thing I heard.
Okay. Is that my internet?
I don't know. It just said,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she moved out to where you live, to Canada, and we still communicate. She's an amazing person, and again, that's there's no general rule here. She was exception to the rule. Even though she knew very well I was Jewish, but she was my friend. She was someone I depend on. I still have another friend that lives not too far from me, who was my great friend, and she is Ukrainian. And there was never an issue that I was Jewish. So again, generally, yes, it was uncomfortable. Did I have friends? Yeah. Maybe because of my personality that I try to be as friendly as I can because I love people. I need to be around people. But it still felt amazing that like you could say out loud, I'm Jewish, and not to be embarrassed. That's the thing. Not to be embarrassed. To say who you are.
I think that is the greatest gift that we can truly discover about ourselves. My curiosity is bringing us back still to your childhood, Inna, because there's something so I just try to be in your shoes, right? Because, you moved over here when you were 15. And so you have a country that is unstable. You are not considered, part of the majority religion. And I do know you told a story, and you don't have to tell the same story, but you were also present during the Chernobyl experience as well.
That was a tough one.
And how did that impact you?
At that time I was 13. It was 1986. I was turning 13, and it was May. Everyone was outside. And that was the worst day to be outside. No one knew for a day or two because first they tried to cover up and not tell people. And the moment my parents found out, they grabbed my sister and my grandma, the three of us, they put us on a train, probably one of the last trains that they were able to. That train was probably not even working for a while, because all you could see was dirt. It probably wasn't used for like a decade. Dirt and the wet bed sheets that they gave us, literally completely soaked. And we looked through the window, looking at my parents and thinking, am I ever going to see them again? It's insane. It's for 13-year-old to put on a brave face. My sister and I both, my grandma, who didn't know what's going on, and they sent us away to a southern part of former USSR. And people that took us in, we went through family to family to stay over for a couple of weeks on, then another couple of weeks. Believe it or not, many of these families were Muslim families that took in the Jews. So yes, people have great hearts. There's no general rule. And it was really, really scary to not understand what's happening and to feel like I'm never going to see my parents again. And then thankfully things resolved more or less. A lot of people were really sick that stayed. A lot of people developed, like my sister developed Hashimoto's. She had to come back earlier because they threatened my mother with her school that she's never going to graduate. She was at that time when she had to graduate. So she had to leave earlier from where I was with my grandma, and I stayed. And she developed Hashimoto's. People developed cancers. People had birth defects. It was terrible. Yeah, a lot of death afterwards. And it wasn't an experience that, one of those steps in life that whether shape you up into someone else or...
for sure, because even the detail in which you remember the story, right? Like, and how much it's still so present within you. How long were you away from your parents?
It was a little less than a year. They did come to see me. They came to see me a couple of months in the summer, and then they went back to work. I went to school there starting September, but I was back before the end of the school year. So it was a little less than a year that I was away. And it was a luxury. It was a luxury to be that person that stay away. A lot of people in our building, for example, could not afford to do that. Their kids could not do the same. They stayed.
So what were your parents doing since they couldn't leave? Like, what was their occupation?
My father is a math teacher and my mom's engineer. And I don't think that was even an option for a discussion to leave. Right. Like you'd be probably a traitor or something like that to do that. That was not even considered.
So when they decided to leave and come here to the U.S. when you were 15, it was just for safety. It was for health. It was for, bringing you guys to a place in which you could thrive. Is that what they were thinking or feeling?
Combination of things. The post Chernobyl, things started brewing, and my father is very sensitive to that. He's a brilliant guy, and he's into history, and he knows how history repeats itself. And the president of former USSR was at that time who brought up the perestroika, the changing up of the entire system. And he saw that, when there are ripples and waves, the first ones to blame are usually the Jews in there. So, and if you're familiar with the term pogroms, that's when the revolution in the beginning of the country, the beginning of last century started, and when they killed off a lot of Jews in Ukraine, just because they were angry. People were angry with politics, hungry, confused, and they had to find someone to blame. They killed cities, towns, small towns after towns. They just came and cut people. So my father says, that could happen again. We are not going to be here for that. And we left. At that time, the curtain was lifted because you couldn't, like, we didn't leave before also, not because we were confused or waiting for the right moment. We just couldn't simply. It wasn't allowed. So when Gorbachev came, he let the Jews that wanted to leave go. He said, fine, let them go if they want to. So there was 2 waves of immigration with us being stateless, it's called. There's even a movie, someone made a movie called Stateless about my immigration. The 2 waves of people leaving when they finally could. Enormous amount of people were going from like big towns in Russia, Moscow, Leningrad, and Kiev, where I come from. And they immigrated to America. And we got stateless visa. We all had $91 each because we had to give up everything. We had to give up our citizenship. We had to give up the apartment we had. We couldn't sell at that time. Later on, it was allowed, like maybe 5-10 years later, people were able to sell and take their money or transfer their money here. But at that point where we were living, we had to live with $91, period. Like, that's it, in a suitcase.
Wow.
And it wasn't just us. I can't be like sitting here complaining that we are such a poor family that had to do that. It was tons of others with us. We went from Kiev to Moscow, from Moscow to a town in Austria, capital in Austria. What was that? Don't remember. And then to Italy, and from Italy, finally, the United States accepted us, which was like, we had to wait there for our, for being accepted. Not everybody got accepted. That was another stressful moment for my grandparents, poor grandparents. They fought the war. They went through anti-Semitic issues all through our life. My grandpa went through concentration camp. And having that hardship and that life, and now they're sitting there in Italy with the chance of not possibly even getting into America because they said, let's hold off, too many people. And then they finally let us in. Oh, my poor grandparents.
So you show up in the United States with $91 for your family, and your parents don't have jobs?
No. 91 each. So that was better.
Okay, so for each family member, it was $91, and and you have to rebuild your entire life from the ground up. Then
kudos to my parents. They were those 2 that held us together. My sister and I, still young. No one's going to depend on us. My grandparents were already too old to do anything or to learn the language. So it was pretty much my father felt the weight, and he was there. Like the next morning, we got to the country at night, and there were relatives and friends that they knew. They made calls here, and the next morning at 5 a.m, he was on construction working. So literally a couple of hours since we got here, and he's been working 2-3 jobs ever since. Still, he's 72.
Wow.
God bless. Yep. That's daddy.
But still, what a powerful story, right? Like of, drive and what we do for our families and for, creating opportunities for the ones that we love. Like that, I just want to pause and honor that.
For sure. They're amazing. I tell my kids every day that it's your grandparents that were the train drivers and actually did this big step.
So now you're 15. You come to the United States. There's a sense of freedom. Did you knew English when?
No, I learned really fast. At that point, I had less of an accent than I have now, because I did not communicate in Russian. I cut it off. I was determined to learn. I didn't speak any Russian at home. I tried to teach my parents. The friends in school only spoke English to me, and I got it so quickly. Later on, when when the friends in my community, and I started, I like people. I have a lot of friends, and a lot of my friends did speak Russian, and I started talking again with my family. That's when it started settling in, and it just, by the time I went to college, this accent is now part of me.
Which I love. I love that you have an accent. I think it's part of your story and your being and your essence.
It's me. It's me.
So what grade did you come into when you came into the United States? Like, that's high school.
That's high school, 10th grade.
10th grade.
I went to 10th grade. I stayed over for another year in 10th grade because I just, didn't have credits. But then I took a lot of credits that year and I went straight to 12th. So I skipped 11th because I was working hard. I'm a hard worker.
Like a good model by your father, right? And So when you decided to go to college, what did you go for?
It was such an easy decision to go to pharmacy school. I'm not sure whether anyone even influenced me. I loved the pharmacy concept even there in Ukraine. My grandma was sick a lot when I was little, and I was with her a lot of times. Like, I never went to daycare. I went straight to school. So tons of times I spent with my grandma, and she had probably Crohn's, which I now realize no one diagnosed with Crohn's there at that time. But she suffered with pretty much similar symptoms.
Can you pause and ask what the symptoms of Crohn's are? Because now I'm curious.
Sure. It's a really severe abdominal pain. It's diarrhea or diarrhea alternating with constipation. Could be fevers and chills, and manifest later with joint pains and arthritic kind of symptoms. It could even affect skin. People that have Crohn's have psoriasis or acne or other things. So it's a full body on autoimmune inflamed situation. Yeah, that starts in the gut.
And so your grandmother, you would think, had that, and it was undiagnosed for.
Yeah, she was operated. They chopped off a big chunk of her intestines. So she lived most of her life without it. They said that was the only thing they could do because it was like literally all inflamed and raw. They had to. And I loved pharmacy. I loved that in Europe, in Kiev, it wasn't the same as here. Pharmacies look so boutique looking, all that glass and the essential oil smells and eucalyptus, and I loved it. I always made her buy me things from the pharmacy. And now these serious women in white coats coming out to help and give the medicine to my grandma to make her feel better. I mean, how much better can this be? So plus when I was finishing up high school, I heard that pharmacists make good money. So, no brainer, I'm going there. I didn't fully think through what the position and the role of a pharmacist by the big concept, because really I have the leadership skills and I'm a leader by nature. And if at that time there were all these awareness tests or personality tests or all these tests to choose the best for your profession, like my kids now can, we didn't have that at that time. I fit more into a role of a doctor or someone, a leader that actually prescribes. Pharmacist by the role accepts the prescription and fills it. It's like, here's a leader, he tells me what to do. Just generally, I'm not, there are plenty of leaders, pharmacists, I'm just saying by the concept of a profession. So if at that time, but I mentioned maybe once or twice to my mother about being a doctor, all I got was, oh my God, there's so much schooling. You're a girl, you need to make babies and get married. There will be no time for that. So I thought, no brainer, pharmacist it is. No medical school for me. That's kind of stayed with me all my life. Medical school now or later, maybe never.
But it goes to say how much things have changed
Sure.
you know what I mean, with women, that we would not say that to our children.
For sure.
Now, right? Like, I just love that was how quickly we can shift, beliefs and even, roles and stereotypes and all these kinds of things within the world today. Just the power of community and word and all of those kinds of things. Because your mom had the best intentions when she said that.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's how she sees it.
I know, it's so cool. I love to honor, right, the belief in the systems of our parents and our generations above us. So how long was pharmacy school?
5 years.
That's still a lot of schooling.
Yeah, and it wasn't over. Like in 2015, I went to get my doctorate, so I did another 3 of doctorate in pharmacy.
So you did 8 years of pharmaceutical education.
Yes, I did.
So that's what you learned. So tell me, like, what was curiosity? What are the major thing that are you learning? The chemistry of the combinations of the different like medications to solve problems? Like, what is the biggest thing that we learn in pharmaceutical school?
That's a very good question. And it did change. It did change from when I learned in the 90s to what they're doing right now. When I was studying in the 90s, clinicals were just starting to be introduced, clinical applications. It was mostly pharmacology. But that also really resonates with me. Pharmacology is a mechanism of action of how the drug works. And I am the person who wants to know how things work. I'm curious by nature. I'm really into finding out how things work. So that really was my thing too. That's another reason why I went to pharmacy. So then it was mostly pharmacology, some clinical there, but now a lot of concepts in pharmacy are clinical, evidence-based, and the more evidence-based and the more trials and more understanding of where you have really solid trial to depend on, because most of the things right now in the medicine is guideline-based. So there's a condition, there's a protocol. Here you have this many symptoms, for example, asthma, 3 times a week, once a week episode, or more than 5. So for each one, you'll now have a next step. So protocols were developed mostly based on guidelines, and guidelines is where we now spend a lot of times. Which studies go to recommend? How solid is the study? Is it paid by pharmaceutical company? And unfortunately, a lot of them are, but who else is going to invest the money? Who else is this wealthy? That's why there's not enough in nutraceutical world. These companies way too small in functional medicine world, way too small to pay the money for such huge trials. That's why we don't have enough of the evidence-based stuff. Okay,
pause, because I want to go back to, because I feel like we're on the cusp of going from one to the other, and I want to know how the gap worked. Inna, so you did 8 years of pharmaceutical. You get a job in pharmacy?
Yep, right away, right after school in the 90s, I got a job, and I was a pharmacist for a while.
What's a while? Like, give me some times here. How old are you? What's happening in your life?
Sure, 96. I finished, 97 got licensed, 99 got married, 2000 had Ethan.
How old are you in the greater scheme of things? Because we know that you came over when you were 15, you had, 3 years of school, that's 18, and 8 years, so you were like 30-ish. Yeah.
When I had Ashton, I turned 30, so that's when I got sick. That's right after having him. I turned 30 in July, I had him in August, and I got severely sick right after birth. From ICU to hospital the entire year. in and out.
You just had a baby and you're in ICU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that baby didn't even get to breastfeed because I was in ICU. That poor kid.
Well, I'm not even, okay, I know your child's there, but I'm thinking about you right now. You know what I mean? Becoming a new mom, bringing a new life into this world and not even being able to bond in that way and then not even knowing answers for what was going on in your own body.
Yeah, it was scary. They came out, they didn't know what to do right after Ashton was born. I was in ICU. They came out, literally tell my parents, like, we're not sure if she's even going to make it. You might just go spend the time in the room. Like that.
So like legitimately you're giving birth and you...
Right after I gave birth, I had a crazy fever that didn't break. It was insane. And they couldn't break it with anything they were giving me for hours. And my vitals were getting worse and they didn't know what's going on. And that was the blackout date in 2003 when I was giving birth to my second one and blackout happened. So the hospital doesn't have the lighting. The operating rooms had the generators, but the entire, like, nurses couldn't get to work. There was not enough staff, like that kind of day. It was, and I wanted to also, I was stressed out about my older one who was 3 at the time because there was no communication. I didn't know I had a sitter at that time. That was another thing I kept on thinking, is my Ethan okay over there?
Were you coming in and out of consciousness through this fever?
Yeah, yes, in and out.
Because I can only imagine that, like, even when I get ill, I get that delusional feeling around me. So I can only like imagine what you must have been feeling at this extreme fever for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Crazy. Yes. And thoughts about Ashton being born and Ethan. That's pretty much all I thought about when I would be in and out.
And so how long were you in ICU right after his birth?
A couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks in ICU.
Right after, in intense, in ICU, I believe was at least a week, maybe a little more, but then another couple of weeks in the hospital, moved to a room. And they couldn't give me many answers. They were like, I'm somewhere between maybe a really bad pneumonia or something else. And no one knew for sure why this happened and what has happened. And I've seen tons of doctors afterwards when I was actually able to make appointments, because most of the time all I wanted to do was lay in bed. I couldn't get up, could not.
So what were your symptoms at this point?
At this point, the diarrhea and severe fatigue and abdominal pain and fevers that would start at night and they were getting worse at night. So they were classic symptoms of Crohn's, but only later on we found out that that's what it was.
So were you in and out of the hospital with this?
Yeah, I was. I made it to quite a few visits that year. It was scaring my sister. I remember how she was taking, like, one day she's like, enough of these Brooklyn hospitals, let's go to the city, it would be better. So we went to Manhattan with her. It wasn't better. It's still a hospital. Yeah, I'm like, it's so hard to get back to all these negative memories right now.
Well, I mean, there's somebody listening who's right now who maybe having this exact same thing happening in their life right now. So I'm so grateful that you're sharing this, Inna, because I think it really impacts, the person who thinks they're alone right now.
Yeah. I hope they get their light and their way.
Right, because you suffered this is a year of in and out of hospitals, no answers. You didn't know that you were eating incorrectly, so you just kept eating foods that were causing the inflammation, causing discomfort, and nobody knew what to do with you. Nobody had any answers as to what was going on.
No.
No matter what tests you were having.
Yeah. Maybe it's something, maybe it's pneumonia related, maybe it's lupus, maybe let's rule this out, let's rule that out, maybe Lyme, maybe they couldn't even, they didn't get me on the right path until like all the GI symptoms started presenting. But they presented themselves really quickly. Just originally, a few years before I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, I didn't realize it could get this bad, and that I was misdiagnosed then. But it was really Crohn's. And then finally Crohn's diagnosis.
So how long after your birth did that happen?
It is hard to say right now. I can't put the month. It was under a year. It was before the year was over.
That's still a long time to be.
Yeah, it took a long time. Yeah. And then I was put on medications, and I was promised, this juice is gonna make you so much better. It was at that time, it was probably the first biological. It was 2003, 2004. And the Remicade was the only biological available for Crohn's and colitis. There's a new class of medications that came out in the early 2000s. Now there's many of them. They all cost thousands of dollars per pop. And I remember it was over 2,000 at that time, or 2.5. 2003 that's more money than now. And insurance approved. I was like amazed, and it didn't do much.
So here you've done all your education to get this answer, right? You spent your like a decade of your life, more than that, over a decade in the pharmaceutical industry. You get the answer that they have for you for the discomfort and the disease that you've just been diagnosed with. You take it and
kind of, sort of, exactly. But that was my blessing. That was my gift. That was something that I am super grateful for, because if the medications worked 100%, I'm not sure if I would still go and look for more answers and look for something that's more natural, that has less side effects or no side effects, and will continue with my journey and will be here helping others, and will have a practice that's helping others. So blessing.
This is the point of the story where everything changes.
Yep.
So because the medication didn't work, you did what?
I started searching for other ways. I felt hopeless, felt like I was done. I was in my bed. I write that story in whether it's one of my books or one of my blogs, where the bed broke under me. Like, I felt so hopeless one day. Like, that's it. What the heck? How am I gonna live? And I'm laying in my bed, and we had this beautiful Italian furniture, and the bed just broke, and mattress went flat on the floor in my Brooklyn house. That day, I guess you could not forget either. My husband was the person that told me, you'll find something. I looked in his eyes. That was somehow accepted as a message, yes, I totally believe this man. I trust him, and I'll find something. I needed that. And he was searching. He was the original person that started the research on internet about the diets. He bought Kevin Trudeau book, The Things They Don't Want You to Know About. We started reading more. I went to see nutritionist, the traditional nutritionist, that was not what was working at the time. And just to mention, we talked about the hospital, and when I still ate the foods that I wasn't supposed to. Hospital food, you get the white toast, which is wheat, one of the most irritants, and the little milk. I think they might still be giving the same things in the hospital till today. Milk and toast. something, the two things that the last thing on earth you should be having when you have gut inflammatory issues. So yes, started changing my nutrition, went to see a couple of people. Then someone introduced me to a holistic nutritionist from California. That was making a difference. Then I went to see a holistic MD in Brooklyn, and she made a difference. I went to see John of God in Brazil to get spiritual healing. That was such a profound week. Wow. Like I was I was living so not on the planet. It was a surreal experience. And I started getting better and better from all these things, but I was still nowhere near perfect. And but at that point I started writing my very first website, Journey with Crohn's Disease, to at least share what I already found out and what has helped me so far. And I was contacted by many people with questions, and even already few asked for consultations and coaching. And then I was introduced to Dr. Kalish with functional medicine concept, just by someone who contacted me on that website. And that's it. That was like my love affair has started with functional medicine, because it was so me. The idea of a medicine that will get to the root cause of the problem. I mean, how much smarter can it be? You're not patching the symptom. You're not going after what's bothering now. You're trying to find out what could be causing it. And that root cause could be root cause for other things in the system. Like till today, I find one parasite in one person could start with just gut symptoms and then create hormone problems and then create skin problems, all rooted to one thing. It could be many for some people, but it could be one.
And so because I'm just because again, I'm not enlightened into knowing. So that's what functional medicine is. That's the baseline, is like you get to the very initial, I think of dominoes, right? Like the domino effect, to the very first domino, in order to relieve all the other symptoms that get knocked down afterwards. Correct.
It's often starting with finding the root cause, or maybe possible other causes, but they're all the initial causes that started the problem. And then taking care of them, healing them, addressing them to the best of your, if it's something that's lifestyle related and you really can't do it for your client, for example, then you give them the tools. Then you recommend someone that can help them with the mindset, for example. Negative thinking alone is not going to get you that physically sick. But if you happen to be, traveling to like an exotic place, picking up a bug, plus you have genetic predisposition for an autoimmune condition, plus you just broke up with your boyfriend and you're stressed out, and something else, your stress level is up, your immune system's down, and that could affect you. That could become that original root cause, and then you pile on top, and if things are untreated, you create a chronic, serious problem.
So it's at this point now that you've done all of this research, you've been introduced to functional medicine, that you start to realize that this is big. This is a key. This is something that everybody needs to know about. Was it functional medicine then that really was the eclipser of you getting back to a state of health again?
For sure. That was it. I didn't just fix my gut. I also fixed something that I didn't know I had a problem with, which was my hormones. Because, everyone has PMS, everyone has the cramps, everyone has moodiness. That's a normal thing. And until I didn't anymore, I didn't have the cramps or moodiness, and my cycle became regular, and I was feeling great. It was like accidental fix. That's actually my second book. That's what I'm writing about. More hormones, because you're healing the gut. So yeah, it was a beautiful thing, and I've been in remission since then. Since I found Dr. Kalish's course, I have learned many other things.
How long ago was that? Sorry, I just want to know. I like timelines.
When was that? 2009. I took his course. I graduated from his course in 2010. Became certified in his method. I've taken a lot of classes. I've taken a lot of training in functional medicine ever since then, and from different doctors.
But I want to go somewhere else, Inna, now.
Yay, let's do.
You know where I want to go, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Because I think that there's something that you have this beautiful knowledge from the scientific world, right? And now you have the functional knowledge of like getting to the root issue, and you can actually, almost like I said, peel back the layers until you get to the seed of the problem.
Yeah.
And be able to solve the problem. So you've got the functional medicine behind you. Is there anything else that, comes to mind, Inna, that you are gifted with in the ability to sense, see, or know issues that people may or may not be suffering with?
Yeah, I believe I was gifted something more of a that doesn't have the physical. It's intuition, and I realized that I have to start trusting it more on a couple of instances where a friend of my husband's had these things under his eyes, and my intuition was tell him to go see a cardiologist, and I never said anything. And I felt like, who the heck am I to say things like that, and how people will perceive it, and it's just not right. And he passed from a heart attack in his late 40s. I always felt that, I should have probably, maybe if I said something that would have made a difference. So ever since then, I try not to hold off. And if I have intuitive thought or something related to whether it's a visual, where I would look at the person and will feel that I need to say something, I will say it. And if it's a very strong belief, I will not hesitate, and I will not hold off. I will say it.
Well, and I mean, I think, first and foremost, Inna's kind of downplaying what she's actually capable of here. She's telling this story about her husband's friend who had, something where, what was he originally going to get checked out when he had these things behind his eye?
It wasn't behind, it's under. It's like the little cholesterol deposits. He wasn't checking anything out. He felt great. He felt healthy, and he felt fine. But
you could tell something was wrong.
I could tell something was wrong, and I wouldn't say anything.
Out of fear at that time, right? Yeah. But this is not something that is a one-stop thing. Like, you have been, like, Inna's in a mastermind group that I run, and so is another person. And she got on the phone with this. Well, we were in a group call, and you were just like, nope, this is what your son has, I can tell. And, you just said it just like that, with such conviction and such knowing, without speaking to her son, without seeing her son, without having, any other communication other than a quick little chat in the chat box and what she was saying. And this woman took her son to the doctor, Inna, and got the exact diagnosis you said. Like, I think that there is something so powerful in your gift that you can actually read what is going on in the human body beyond what the papers or what other people can see. And I just want you to really anchor into that, because it is an incredible, incredible gift.
I believe so. I have to work on that more and be more open with that gift. It's true. It's
because
true.
What happened with your mom the other day?
Yeah.
What happens when I know people?
Yes, she felt the symptoms. She told me how she's feeling, and I just knew that her H. pylori is back. She once had that problem that caused her to have an ulcer. And she basically said just 2 words, and I said, your H. pylori is back. You need to do an herbal treatment for that. Like someone else told me that this is what's happening. That's how it comes, like this is what's going on. Like, it's not even me. Dr. Kalish once mentioned, when you treat someone with functional medicine, you have to unlearn everything you learned, whether in pharmacy school, medical school, or in all these schools. Unlearning is the best thing. Sometimes. So yes, we are like traditionally trained. We are not using intuition at all, and it's like even like embarrassing, right? What the heck? What are you, a voodoo person? But a true healer has to be able to connect with the client. A true healer has to be able to spend the time and understand just by looking. I mean, in functional medicine, we do get the cues and like, for example, something on the tongue. Show me the tongue. This is something that's showing me your gut microbiome as well. Crazy. Or ear structure. Now there's scientific proof to that, to relate ear structure to a risk of cardiovascular disease, that lower part. But in functional medicine, we looked at it a while ago already, understanding how the earlobe looks like. It tells us about cardiovascular health. Or other features in the face, color, a lot of health clues just by looking. So maybe that's also playing subconsciously in my mind, but things like this person has that's like comes through really fast without me. That's with me unlearning and just
trusting,
accepting, trusting, and this has to be.
You do know that that's how my gift comes through too, right? Like, it's just a voice that speaks from behind me. It's generally my voice, but it comes so fast and so quick. It's like there's no way it came from myself when I'm working with you guys and when I'm working with my clients, right? Okay. That is the true essence of the. I think it's the base of the gift and listening, right? Like, I think the receiving the information and then taking action on the receive is what trust is.
Exactly. Yeah. Trusting. Yep.
So here you are today. I'm just going to ask, how long have you been hearing that voice though? Like, in terms of when you looked at, like, do you think that it was even when you were with your grandmother as a kid that you just had some knowing, or when do you think that really fully started to be? Maybe it was when I was young. Yes. Yeah. I was trained not to trust these kind of things, right. The society, the science and all these things. Yeah. I like analytical. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. So let's push this away. So yeah, I guess it's been a while. Yeah. So I'm so excited. If you see me right now, this is my favorite kind of conversation, you guys. When did you start to pay attention to it and say, maybe there's something here?
So that was that point when this happened to the guy.
Right.
But then I started saying already, you should really check into, like, figure out what's going on with your immune system, because you need to take this supplement for support. I could say things like that to a person, or like my family, I can tell them what to do with safety. I try not to hold off anymore.
Because truly, like, what a powerful human you are. And I mean this in the most amazing way. From, like, even as a child and being in the pharmacy, your entire life has been the health and well-being of others.
That's very true. That's my life. Exactly.
Like, what a Stardust story. Like, it fills me with such joy. And to, like, when I said at the beginning of this podcast that you truly are the trifecta of this wellness, and especially for those with Crohn's and colitis and hormonal issues. Like, that is your like zone of genius. Is that true?
Very true. That is my specialty. Yes.
Right, because you lived it. Not only like did you do this whole life story of medicine, but you actually went through the process of you know, your own body.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was like, no, please talk. This is just more like, I'm just like, wow, Inna, like you are truly an incredible gift on this earth.
Thank you, my darling. I do think that understanding being sick is helpful to help someone else, because you have to go through all these steps to understand it that much better for a client. You had to feel the pain to understand what kind of pain they go through. So I do believe it gives you the advantage to be their healer.
Of course. And so my question for you, and it's okay if it's a science medical book, and it may be Dr. Kalish, but I'm going to ask you, as I do every single person for my inventory of most amazing books ever read in the history of the land, when you can think back, as an avid reader and a book nerd, I love to hear the book that changed a person's life. And the first answer is always the right answer. But if I were to ask you, thinking back on your life, Inna, like what book did you read that was just like the game changer for you?
Wow. I know which book that is. Would you believe that I don't, it was written in Russian. I was about 13. It was about a doctor that was thrown. Oh my goodness, my father gave me the book. What was the name of it? Whoa. But anyways, I'll tell you what the book is about. Oh, I have to ask my dad. We didn't bring
we'll put it in the show notes when we get to it. But what was the book about?
It was about this medical doctor who got into this small town, got there by accident. Someone saved his life, and he ended up there, and he had no medical tools. He had no medical books with him, and he had to be like the herbal healer in that small town. He had to heal himself from the wounds that he had. And basically, oh gosh, what was the name of it? I read it when I was like so young.
We'll figure it out. We'll make sure that we get it, because I love that that's the book that impacted you the most, and it is your own personal, soul story at the same time. How powerful is that?
Well, I did not remember about this book until you just told me. Oh wow, that book fascinated my dad. So he wanted to share it with me. He has a lot of the same gifts. Like if you met him, you'd be like, that's how Inna has all this stuff. Okay. He uses herbs. He's working in school as a paraprofessional, and he makes herbal concoctions and brings it to these women for their hormones. I don't agree with with some of it. He reads recipes of how to make it and stuff. I'm like, it has to be, from a credible
like an apothecary.
Right, like from a good nutraceutical company that has clean sources. But that's all that natural approach and medicine and healing. That's definitely generational.
So cool. That's so fun. And you really are amazing. And I really want to shine that spotlight on you. And if people are listening and they can hear your Stardust and they have the gut issues and the hormonal issues, and they're like, man, she has everything that I need. She's got the trifecta of serving me in this level. Where can they connect with you?
Well, my website is called digestivereset.com, and that's where you get my phone number. That's where you could schedule with me. You could upload my free book. That was a best-selling book for Crohn's and colitis. It's called Crohn's and Colitis Fix. And all that is available on digestivereset.com.
And we'll put that in the show notes for everybody as well. Ina, I love your story. I love you. I love the magic that you are helping people with, because the gut is the second brain, and you honoring your stardust and getting into this to help people's entire bodies come back into a space of health is really, really incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so honored, and you are magic. You are incredible, and I'm so honored to be here to talk to you.
Yay. Everybody, get in touch with Ina if you need her, and I hope that everybody got something from today's episode because it was so powerful. Have an incredible day, everyone.